What a start to the Book of Boba Fett show, but before we go any further, I want to thank everyone who showed up for the watch party. It was a lot of fun having a chat with you guys, and I hope to do more live streams in the future. There is a ton to unravel here, so let's get this breakdown started. We open with Boba Fett lying in his bacta pod, and we get flashbacks to the past. We first begin on Kamino, and this is definitely a callback to the Attack of the Clones in which we saw Jango Fett and a kid Boba. As longtime fans will know, the clones that were produced on Kamino were in fact based off Jango Fett's DNA after the bounty hunter was contracted by Count Dooku, and Boba Fett is very much a product of clone engineering without the rapid aging process. We then cut to the geonosis arena where Boba picks up the fallen helmet of his father following his decapitation by the hands of Mace Windu, essentially kickstarting his bounty hunter career at a very early stage. We then get a scene that fans have been craving for years. Boba, ingested by the Sarlacc pit following the events in the Return of the Jedi, essentially claws his way out of the beast's belly. Using a stormtrooper's breathing tube for oxygen, he then proceeds to punch and burn his way out. And Boba's action may have actually resulted in the death of the Sarlacc. As you will notice in the background, the tentacles of the Sarlacc have stopped moving altogether, possibly suggesting that this ancient creature might actually be dead. Talk about a bad indigestion. As Boba passes out, he is stumbled upon by a sandcrawler owned by a group of Jawas. They then proceed to strip him, steal his belongings, and leave him for dead. This is the very same group of Jawas that pick up Cobb Vanth in The Mandalorian Season 2, and the very same group of Jawas that sell Cobb Vanth Boba Fett's armor. Boba is then found next by a group of Tusken Raiders, and interestingly enough, this is one of the few moments in the Star Wars universe where we get a deeper look into Tusken culture and life. It should also be noted that the way the Tuskens are dressed here look rather different than the usual Tusken Raiders that we see in The Mandalorian. The Tuskens that we were introduced to in The Mandalorian dressed very much like the ones we saw in the original trilogy. However, the ones that we were introduced here dress in much darker colors, and their outfit reminds me very much of the Grave Tuskens. In Legends, the Grave Tuskens were a mercenary group of Tusken Raiders that belonged to a Dark Jedi, a sort of personal strike force, and they too very much dressed in darker shades and colors, just like the ones we see on screen. They were used by the Dark Jedi to plunder the artifacts of the Sith and the Jedi, however, the vast majority of them were killed by Kyle Katarn. What remained of them eventually became highly sought after bounty hunters and bodyguards by crime lords all over the galaxy, and perhaps somewhere down the line Boba Fett might actually recruit them for the very same purpose. We then see a bunch of Tusken kids beat up Boba with their sticks, and it seems just like the Jawas before, they're all equally scummy. I guess Anakin really did do the right thing after all.
And I slaughtered them like animals.
Later, Boba Fett awakes in the middle of the night next to a captured Rodian. In front of the bounty hunter lies a missive, a dog-like creature that was first introduced in The Mandalorian. As Boba Fett makes his escape, he asks if the Rodian wishes to be untied, but because everyone on Tatooine is a scum, the Rodian alerts the entire Tusken camp instead. As the Rodian does so, the same Kid Tusken runs at Boba but is easily pushed aside. But instead of finishing him off, Boba chooses to spare him instead. Boba's escape is short-lived and he is eventually challenged by one of the Tuskens in a duel, but due to his weakened state, he is knocked out rather quickly. We then see Boba Fett emerge from the Polynesian spot, and he gets ready to receive a few visitors. He is first greeted by an Aqualish who brings a box of credits, followed by a Trandoshan who sounds as treacherous as a Trandoshan can be. The Trandoshan also brings with him a Wookiee Pelt, who are traditional hunting victims of the Trandoshan people. These visitors are introduced by a white droid with some red paint. This is in fact the same torture droid that we see in the Return of the Jedi. This is 88, a smelter droid that was repurposed to torture other droids. The Trandoshan then addresses Boba Fett as Daimyo, which is a very interesting choice of words. The word Daimyo actually originates from Japan, and it refers to the feudal lords who ruled from the 10th century to the early Meiji period. And indeed, in this case, Boba is very much like a Daimyo, as he sits on his throne receiving tributes from his vassals. And this is something that will be very important as the show goes on, as Boba attempts to secure more vassals in order to consolidate his power. We are then introduced to the orange Twi'lek of the trailers, who introduce himself as the major domo of the mayor of Mos Espa, and instead of offering tribute, it is revealed that the mayor demands tribute instead.
Another understandable misunderstanding,
making it clear an incoming power struggle between the two. Later, 2 Gamorreans are placed before Boba, and it is revealed that they were the former bodyguards of Bib Fortuna. While the torture droid, to no one's surprise, advocates for torture, Boba chooses to spare them in exchange for their loyalty, to which Fennec is somewhat wary about. We then get a conversation between Boba and Fennec about the way things work in Espa as they walk through its street. Mos Espa is also the city in which Anakin grew up in as a slave. It is here that we are told that Boba doesn't wish to do things the way things are normally done, and this might very well undermine his authority in the future. We then enter the sanctuary where we see Max Rebo jamming away on what looks to be the Star Wars version of a keyboard. Max Rebo, the blue alien elephant, is the same musician that entertained Jabba the Hutt in The Return of the Jedi. We then see Fingrin Dan, who is in fact a member of the band The Modal Nodes, the very same band that we see in Mos Eisley. And what is really interesting about the music here is that it's actually a rendition of the Mos Eisley Cantina theme. But instead, the song is played with a sort of South American influence, signaling to the audience that this is a very different part of Tatooine. And sure enough, in sharp contrast to Mos Eisley Cantina, this establishment is far more respectable. We then see a group of people seated at the bar playing what looks to be sabacc. At the center of the scene, we also see the droid RX-24, who is a very familiar face in the Disney Star Tours. This is then followed by astromechs serving drinks, much like how R2 was made to do in The Return of the Jedi. We are then introduced to the second Twi'lek of the trailer, Madame Garsa Fwip. Getting a sense for Madame Garsa, I do get a feeling that she is far more influential and powerful than she lets on. While she appears to be accepting of Boba Fett's rule, I am pretty sure she has a much bigger role to play in the future. After exchanging pleasantries, they are then handed back their helmets filled with a whole bunch of credits, to which Fennec points out that Boba's pot looks a lot shinier than hers.
Yours looks shinier than mine.
On their way back, they are then ambushed and we get the fight scene that we have been shown in the trailers. And during the fight scene, you can actually notice that Boba isn't fighting the way he normally is used to. Not to mention, despite getting hit fewer times than Fennec Shand, he appears to be weaker, no doubt having not fully recovered from his ordeal with the Sarlacc pit. Additionally, it also doesn't seem like their attackers are trying to kill Fennec or Boba, attempting to stun them instead. They're also armed with power shields that are able to deflect most weapons. The two of them are only saved when the Gamorreans enter into battle, and we finally get a sense for how competent they are as fighters. As their assailants make their escape, Boba disintegrates one of them, a nod to the no disintegration line in Empire.
No disintegration.
After the battle, Boba Fett goes back into his
Polynesian spa.
and his dreams continue. This time we see that he and the Rodian are forced to dig through the sand for these black-shaped fruits that contain water in them. These are most likely how the Tuskens survive out in the desert without any moisture evaporators. The group then happens to stumble across a raid by the Nikto Swoop Gang, and these guys have also featured extensively in the trailer, so it remains to be seen what interaction Boba will have with them, because we do know that he does end up fighting them at some point. And as if things couldn't get any worse, the group are attacked by a strange sand creature. At this point, we don't really know the name of this newly introduced creature. Towards the end, we see the Tusken child parading the head as if he was claiming the kill as his own, and the rest of the tribe seems to be celebrating this moment. However, the leader of the Tusken offers Boba a drink of water, a sign of acceptance and recognition that Boba was in fact the real killer of the monster. So that's all for the breakdown of episode 1. I was really amazed and excited with what we got. It was short but sweet, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
And I have spoken.